you spoke about the word identity a moment ago. And when you had a father that adopted you, I think at 12, is that correct?
Right. Yeah.
So you originally had a different last name. You essentially had a different identity until 12 when you took on a new identity with the last name.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard you talk about this moment in terms of taking on the identity of a new person's name. How did that shape you for 12 years of your life, you're a different man's name. Then you take on Robbins.
Yeah.
What did that identity shift do internally for you? Did it give you a different certainty or confidence in life because this father figure was more empowering for you than the previous ones? Did something shift and say, I'm going to go create something of myself now that I take on this name? I've never heard you talk about this. I'm curious about it.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, you're right. It was 12. I was in the 7th grade. It was my fourth father, Jim Robbins, whose name I carry. He adopted me. I loved him to death because he was an athlete, a semi-pro baseball player, and I'd done that. And so, when I was a kid, I really wanted to play sports, but we had no money. So I couldn't go play Little League or Pop Warner football and things of that nature. Just couldn't afford it. And so he convinced my mom that, and my mom didn't want me to get hurt. I was always the smallest guy, believe it or not.
Same here.
I mean, I was 5'1" in high school, it's like my sophomore year, and then boom, 6'7". But the process he brought was, I think, more, I connected him through moxie. Like, I think I always had it in me.
He had the moxie.
He had moxie, and I had moxie, but it, like, through sports is how our relationship created. He started to play fast pitch softball, and I would get up there and pitch to him as hard as I could throw the ball for 3 hours till my arm was literally falling off me. And it was just like, or he hit me baseballs for 2 hours, and I was in the beginning, and I hadn't played, right? So it smacked me in the face, and I'd be bleeding, and he goes, keep on going, Tone, and I keep on going, right? And I was like, so part of it was my nature, but my nature got nurtured.
Yes.
Right? I got rewarded, and rewarded was the form of love I had from him. So I think it wasn't the name as much as the relationship, but the name was, it was Mahorovic.
Your last name was Mahorovic.
Yeah, Maharovi. I used to hate when I go into school because they'd say, no one could pronounce my name. So now I'm Robbins. It was easier. There's some value in that. But I think the bigger piece it was more than that. It was more like, okay, this is my father. My natural father is a really good man. Looking at my life now, 66, looking back, I can see what a good man he was. But he worked underground parking lots here before we had automatic parking. So that's all he did all day long for 40 years. And he was an alcoholic, but not a mean one. He was a nice one. But my mom framed me on who he was.
Yes. She told a story.
And I believe the story.
And so that's, interesting.
Okay? And the story is, he's weak, he's worthless, he's all these things. I don't want to be those things.
Right.
And then the second husband she left him for the same reason. And then the third, and somehow we're at the fourth. And he's not weak. So they fought like you can't even imagine.
Interesting.
But so the answer to your question, I think, is I developed this identity that was based on, I'm going to be an athlete. And I developed a plan. I'm a plan guy, right? So
strategy.
I'm going to be
a strategy.
That's right. I mean, I remember we had no money. I'd save up all my money, work as a janitor so I could go to Dodger Stadium and bleed Dodger blue in the right field bleachers way at the top, like twice in a year would be a big deal. Now I own them. You own a piece of them.
That's a dream come true. That's amazing.
Pretty cool. Small amount I own them, but I still own them, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, just at the World Series with Peter Guber as the primary owner, my dear friend, and we were there for the 7th game. I witnessed that. It was just such a journey. But what my plan was simple. It's like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm a shortstop and a pitcher. I'm going to crush it, in junior high school here. I'm going to go to my high school. I'm going to crush it there. I'm going to get a scholarship to USC. Then we'll play in the minor leagues. And then eventually I'm going to get the Dodger organization. I'm going to bleed Dodger blue, and I'm going to be a Dodger baseball player, right? That was my whole plan. So here's what really changed my identity.
Yeah.
I'm Robbins. That didn't help. I've got a good mind. So I was like the best science student. So the science teacher was the coach of the baseball team. And I was a little bit of his favorite student.
Yeah.
Because I could absorb it. I always wanted to make things work and figure it out. And so he loved that about me. So I make the first cut, I make the second cut. And then I know at that time I had hair down below my style back
California
there.
guy.
California guy, your hair was down to here. And he was a straight-laced guy and you didn't have it. So my mom cut all my hair off.
Oh, man.
And I show up. And I got cut from the junior high school team on the last day. And I'm like, my brain was like, what? if I don't make the junior high school team, how the hell am I going to make the high school team? How am I going to do at USC? The whole thing just exploded in front of me. So something inside of me has always been, there's a way, right? And so I was like, what do I want? What am I going to do with my life? Because there was no safety net in my family, right? There was no economic safety net. No one's going to send me to school. And I was like, okay, what do I want? What do I love about baseball? What do I love sports? I love the energy. I love the passion. Same thing as making you want to go to the Olympics, right? I want to go in there and be in the game, but I want the energy that we generate, how it lifts people, how the crowd becomes one. So, okay, well, how can I do that? Well, I'm smart. I'll become a sportscaster. I'll be a sports writer. So I took, in the 7th grade, I took up typing, and I was the only boy in a shorthand class. Wow. So I could take notes really rapidly. And then I was in a program that was called Mentally Gifted Minders. They tested my IQ was pretty high. So they gave you a free, hour in the day that you could do whatever you want. You could design whatever it was, and then they'd score you based on what they thought you did with your time. And so I started reading every book about every different athlete, and I'm learning to type. So I thought, I'm going to interview the Dodgers. So in those days, we had mimeograph. I don't know if you know what that is, stuff, but I typed this stuff on a mimeograph, and I had these questions, and I sent them to Dodgers, and they didn't respond. I sent them again, and I called in, and they just kept pushing. And one day I got this envelope with answers from Ron Say, who was the third baseman, right? And then Steve Garvey, who's still around, and some other players. Wow. And then the next thing I know, I decided I've got to get live interviews, and I want to work for a newspaper. I'm 14.
Wow.
So
wow.
One day I'm in my little open class, and I'm reading the newspaper at Sports Park to see what's going on, and I see an ad that says Howard Cosell, who was the biggest sportscaster in the world at that time. Like, he was the guy that did the Super Bowl. He and Muhammad Ali had this taunting relationship. He was a huge personality. He'd written a book, and it was by Simon & Schuster, who later published my books, and he was going to be over here in on the west side here of LA, at Robinson's.
Okay.
And he's going to sign books for people that bought them. So I called my mom, who never left the house, was always there. And I said, Mom, I never asked you for anything, but I've got a private interview with Howard Cosell.
Wow.
And I did not have a private interview.
Right, but you told her you did. Yeah.
I said, I need you to come get me out of school, drive down there, and get me down there. And I was I don't know what it was. Somehow I got through to her, and she did it. They had tape recorders then, they were cassette players, but they were this size with a separate microphone. And I printed out these business cards that said, Tony Robbins, future sportscaster, currently limited brief taped interviews, sponsored by the MGM program. So I had a little business card.
That's cool. At 14.
Yeah, 14.
Wow.
And so she drives me down. It's about a 2-hour drive to get here. And she's like, this interview better go well. I said, it'll go well, Mom. And I go up and I'm watching, he's on this little dais, and these people are standing in line and, getting the book signed. And this older woman walks up to him and had not bought a book with a napkin and said, would you please sign? He goes, I only sign books, ma'am. And then I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to interview this guy? And then all of a sudden he's starting to finish up, and the guys, his publicists are, ushering him out of the room. And all of a sudden he's getting surrounded there were like cameras everywhere and all these, these sports people and sports writers, and they're like, tell me about this, and what about the World Series, and what about this, and what about Muhammad Ali and the Super Bowl? He's answering, and so I finally pushed through the crowd. I'm this little guy, I got this little green Levi jacket on and jeans, and I got my microphone, and I hand him my card, and I say, sir, I'd like to interview you. I'm interested in becoming a sportscaster. I want to know what makes the difference there and everything else. He said, you want to what, son? He looks at my card, and he looks around the audience, and he saw the moment, and he used it, and he said, young man, I'll give you an interview. He goes, you people wait. So we're standing here by the towels and like that. And he puts his leg up and he goes, tell me your questions. So I take it, my hand, shake him like this, right? Like this, and I'm going, and my mom, I'm thinking, thank God I got this interview. Yeah. And so I asked him, what does it take to be a sportscaster? And he says, well, I'll tell you, Tony. He goes, it's not being an athlete. They know nothing about the English language. And he went through this tirade about athletes become sports writers, but people like you who are educated, going for it. So he does this whole thing. So I get about 5 questions in, and the Simon Schuster guy's like, trying to get him out of the room.
Yeah.
And everybody's taking pictures. The LA Times is there, everything else.
Wow.
And he says, he goes, I think I got to go, Tony. And I said, well, could I ask you one final question? He said, sure. At that time, there was a radio guy here in LA who used to, the day after Monday Night Football, he would take all the flubs of Cosell and play them. And he was super popular. His name was Jim Healy, the most popular radio guy at the time, sports guy. I said, do you ever wish the morning after Monday Night Football that Jim Healy would wake up with laryngitis? And the crowd goes, "Ooh!" And the whole time he's been calling me Tony, right? And he goes, "I'm sorry, son, but I've never heard of Jim Healy." And he walked off, and everybody clapped and cheered. So the next day, the LA Times wrote an article about this kid, talked about how the woman couldn't get an autograph, but this kid got this interview, right?
Wow.
Well, my local newspaper, my local town saw this and said, "Would you write an article?" So I wrote a 20-page, single-spaced sports article, which they trimmed down. And then I started getting interviews with Woody Hayes and Joe Namath and all these people at 14 years old. And so that was going to be my target. And then what changed it all was my mom felt like I got KTTV Channel 11 here. It's a Fox station. It wasn't then. They had tried everything to get ratings. They tried Fannie Fox, the stripper, to be the sportscaster.
Wow.
They tried all these things. And then they saw me do these interviews and get interviews with people no one else did. And like right before the Rose Bowl, I get Woody Hayes and Ohio State. It was a giant piece, right?
I'm from Ohio. That's my guy.
Yeah, and in a room full of reporters, and I pulled it off and got it.
Really? You interviewed Woody Hayes?
Yes, yeah. And I wrote this article about the real Woody Hayes because, you know, he smacked a player.
Yeah.
He had all this controversy around him. Anyway, I wrote these articles, and they turned around and they said, he should be our sportscaster. So at almost 16, 15 and a half, I got offered the job to be the sportscaster at KTV. And my mom said, "Your ego's too big, and all this stops now."
Thank you for watching this video. If you want more inspiring clips like this, make sure to click right here to subscribe and click right here to watch that next video that is specific to support you in your life.